In this video, we'll continue discussing attitudes. We'll talk about what can change our attitudes, such as persuasion. So by the end of the video, you should understand how your attitudes can be internally changed through cognitive dissonance, explain how attitudes can be changed through persuasion, and be able to describe the peripheral and central routes to persuasion. So in the previous video, when we introduced the concept of attitudes, we talked about how one thing that shapes our attitudes are our experiences, the people we surround ourselves with, our coworkers, our family, our friends. And we know that because those factors help shape our attitudes, they can actually help change our attitudes. So a change in our social environment and behaviors is one thing that can alter our attitudes. So we have new information that we come across, new experiences that we have. And right now in college, you're probably going through a lot of those new things. And so some of your attitudes may change. They might kind of veer off from what they were previously. Sometimes this helps us to grow as a person, and just kind of become who we really truly are. Another thing that can change our attitudes is a need for consistency. So we talked about something before called cognitive dissonance. And cognitive dissonance is a state of tension that develops when a person simultaneously holds two contradictory cognitions, or when your belief is incongruent with your behavior. So the idea is if we have a behavior, if we do something that isn't consistent with an attitude that we had previously, we can get this cognitive dissonance. And so again, here where you have two cognitions that conflict. So maybe you had an attitude from, kind of a familial background, and then you start learning new information and you start to kind of have a changing attitude. So those cognitions conflicting can cause tension. Or you have a behavior that conflicts with an attitude or a belief. For example, when I was in college, I had a roommate who was very religious and didn't believe in abortions. Well, she found herself pregnant, kind of at a milestone. She was just about to graduate from college, was going to go on and get her teaching credential. And the boyfriend that she was with said, well, I'll only stay with you if you get an abortion. She thought about it long and hard. We had some discussions about it. In the end, she felt the best thing for her to do for her future was to have an abortion. Now, that behavior, having the abortion, conflicted with her attitude. Her attitude was that she was pro-life and she was against abortions. She had thought that, she would never think about having an abortion herself. And so that caused tension. Now, when you have this tension, there's different things you can do. You can reject the belief that you originally had. You can change your behavior. You can deny the evidence, and you can rationalize. Well, changing your belief or changing your attitude is one way that we remain consistent, right? We have a behavior that conflicts with our belief, so we change that belief or that attitude. So here's another example that's from your textbook. And I only put this in there because it reminded me of a childhood friend's mother. She was a smoker, probably at least a pack a day from the time I knew my friend at the age of 8 years old. When we were in our 20s, of course we all hear this, smoking is bad for your health, smoking is bad for your health. Well, if you hear this and you have this belief, but you're a smoker, your behavior is inconsistent with your attitude. So to remove that cognitive dissonance, that tension, you can do one of two things. You can quit smoking, or you can think that research is inconclusive and you can still continue to smoke. So when we were in our probably mid-20s, my friend told me that her mother had decided that it wasn't smoking that caused cancer, it was lettuce. And the reason was because a lot of people get cancer and a lot more people eat lettuce than smoke. So here, she didn't quit smoking. She was rationalizing, saying that research was inconclusive so that she could have a belief that was consistent with her behavior. Ironically, she died after a long battle with cancer. So persuasion is changing our attitude towards something based on some sort of outside source. That could be something we hear in the news, something we hear from friends, teachers, and then of course we have a lot of social media influences these days. So one model of persuasion that we're going to discuss is the elaboration likelihood model. And so this goes over central versus peripheral routes to persuasion. So in the central route, the audience is motivated, they're analytical, they're involved in processing the information. And there's a much higher level of processing. The individual's committed to trying to understand that information. So that makes that persuasion more long-lasting, that there's a long-lasting change that is very likely. In the peripheral route, the audience is unmotivated. They have a kind of a low level of involvement. They're focused on cues, things that just kind of can help them make quick snap decisions. So that attitude change is more temporary, not necessarily a long-lasting permanent change. So one example of the peripheral route might be the Susan B. Komen Foundation and how they got people to really buy into this idea that, like, let's cure breast cancer. Of course, people want to cure breast cancer, right? But they really didn't have a whole lot behind their message of how that was going to happen. But they appealed to the audience by using the pink ribbon movement, using celebrity endorsements, and so they get people to contribute based off of those types of peripheral cues. So you're relying on extraneous information, not an actual message per se. Now in the central route, we see this a lot in things like politics, healthcare decisions. So you might have an audience that's a little bit more motivated. Maybe you as young adults, right? Just voting in this recent election. Hopefully you were motivated to try to figure out what the different candidates were supporting, what their views were, what the future could hold for them. And that leads to a higher level of processing, really trying to understand that instead of just going at face value. And this could lead to a long-lasting attitude change. So just to kind of sum it up, in this elaboration likelihood model, it focuses on the audience, the content of the message, and the source of the message. In the peripheral route, you're making decisions kind of at a face value level, and in the central route, you're really considering the information at hand and processing that information. And this was a model developed by Petty and Cacioppo in the 1980s. Another persuasion technique is the foot in the door technique. The idea here is someone is persuaded by saying yes to a small request, a favor perhaps, only later to be asked by a larger request. So if you say yes the first time, you want to look consistent, so you're more likely to say yes the second time. So for example, your teenager asks if they can borrow the car to go to ice cream with friends. Then the next day, they ask if they can take it down to Laguna Beach for the day. Another example that you might be able to relate to is this idea of, oh, let's just do a free trial. You get a whole month for free, whole month for free. Then when it comes time, you want to look consistent. You want to keep that Spotify account, right? So you just start paying because they've already gotten your foot in the door by giving you that free trial. Or another example might be getting your foot in the door to go to a store. Oh, we have a big sale going on. Once you get in there, well, you're already in the store, you may as well just go ahead and buy something.